Today's show, we're going to be talking about what happened last week, or at least the hearing that happened last week on whether or not there should be a limit on cultivators' licenses. And we have a cultivator with us, Jim Connor, and he's going to talk about that. And in the second half hour, the other shoe that fell late last week is the new interim boss at the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, who has a very strong police background. We're all kind of curious what all that means. But first, we're going to go to Rick Thompson with those great cannabis headlines. Take it away, Rick.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike. Hello again, everyone. This is the Cannabis News with Rick Thompson on 420 Post. Let's begin. I started my news with a recap of last week's meeting as well, so we'll have a lot of dialogue about this. On Wednesday of last week, the regulatory agency held one of their quarterly public review meetings, and they asked respondents to focus on three things: restricted ownership of cannabis cultivation and micro businesses, discontinuing the excess producer licenses, and placing a moratorium on issuing new cultivation licenses. Now, these issues are very timely. Michigan's cannabis pricing has been in free fall for a long time. We're flirting with $100 an ounce pricing in many retail outlets. Responses to the moratorium fell along predictable lines. Many of the state's large producers are not in favor of a limitation, while smaller cannabis entities feel a cap on licenses is necessary to ensure their financial stability. The excess producer license, of course, is a hated creation of the old marijuana regulatory agency. It's widely despised. Now, the ownership restrictions seem to fall about 50-50 in support, in my estimation. What's more interesting were the additional issues raised by the in-person and virtual attendees at that review meeting. Now, they included complaints about the use of illegal immigrants as migrant labor workforce, truckloads of cannabis distillate driving from processor to processor looking for someone to buy it, accusations that cannabis from out-of-state markets is flooding Michigan retailers, and also the unique argument that certain processors are making more distillate than their supply of cannabis plants could logically produce. Blame was flung at the government, the illicit market, the regulatory agency, the big corporate giants, the government again. What is clear is that the nation's second largest cannabis market might be considered mature by American standards, but we still have a lot of growing pains left to work out. Speaking about those cannabis sales, Michigan's cannabis sales during the month of August actually slipped 1% from their July record-setting highs, but the number was still $208 million, which breaks down as $189 million in adult use and only $18.4 million in medical sales, which is the lowest number in years. When considered by themselves, adult use sales actually were up from July's number by a fraction of a percent. The year-to-date cannabis sales total at $1.4 billion, and it is likely the state will hit $2 billion in sales during calendar 2022. Final story, and possibly one of the last big weekends of the 2022 party season, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday were very busy for the community and myself personally. On Friday, the Michael Thompson Clemency Project brought together the families of 10 incarcerated people at the Vehicle City Social Club to discuss the broken judicial system, the hardships these people have had to endure, and the difficulties involved. Flint Mayor Sheldon Neely spoke at the event, as did Mr. Thompson, and there were multiple media outlets covering the event. I was the MC for that event. And on Saturday in far-off Cassopolis, the Goats of Cannabis event brought together a bunch of celebrity judges for the cannabis competition, which included Jamie Cooper, myself, Cheech from Cheech and Chong, Berner, Rudman, many others. The event was a huge success, but I did hear they may have lost a lot of money in bringing so many celebrities in from California. A great time was had, and on Sunday, we had the second annual Entheo Fest on the campus of the University of Michigan. They had scientific researchers, activists, world-renowned psychonauts, and many Michigan notable figures spoke, including Senator Irwin, Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savitt, Assistant Prosecutor Victoria Burton Harris, myself, principals from the Decriminalized Nature MI organization, and others. Now, there will be more events this year, and events in more places than we had in past years. But to me, this was the biggest final weekend of summer that I can remember. The industry is shaky, and some events this year were duds, but I expect there'll be lots of interesting cannabis events after our state pulls itself out from under the snow in 2023. And that's it for the cannabis news with Rick Thompson on 420 Post. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rick. Let's now turn to the events lady, aka the judge, Jamie Cooper.
I judged some really great product. I'm sure Rick enjoyed some of the product as well. And it was so great just sitting down there and smoking a ton of weed in a very short time frame with a bunch of OGs like Rick. So it was a lot of fun. And kudos to Justin, or to JJ, and to Adam and to Tuck for pulling together such a great event. It was definitely one of my favorites so far, especially this summer. So coming up, it's starting to quiet down. We're seeing less and less events on the calendar now. But I'll tell you about the ones that I know that are going on. So I know October 1st, there is going to be the Higher Love Fall Festival. Higher Love up in the UP is just bringing the community together up there. And I think there's going to be a lot of brands at that fall festival. Also up in the UP is Camp Cannabis, that's hosted by the fire station. It is actually a camp out party. It's licensed for consumption and sales. Looks like a fun time. Might be a good opportunity to get up to the UP and see some of the fall color change. And if the leaves have already fallen off of the trees by the time you get there October 7th, at least you'll have a beautiful drive up there as you venture through northern Michigan and see some of the color changes in the down part of the state. October 13th, Cincy is hosting the Women of Cincy Potluck and Pamper Party. We're going to be hosting that event in Lansing. It's free. It's for women, to bring women in cannabis together and just network and build each other up and make new connections. And then November is sneaking up on us. We're going to have MJ BizCon coming up. That's November 16th through the 18th. And of course, we will be hosting our annual party at the top of the Stratosphere. Admission gets you wristbands to ride all the crazy rides. It's an open bar, lots of amazing, yummy food. The food is incredible in Vegas. So, and we have a discount code too. I'll have to go find what that discount code is. So if you're planning to go to MJ BizCon, hit me up. I'll give you our discount code and I'll give you a discount on the tickets. A little tip. I spent 5 years going to MJ BizCon without ever buying an expo pass. You know what? It's pretty fun to just stand outside and smoke with all the people that are there. So if you're looking to save a little bit of money, that's a suggestion, and you can hit up all the after parties. And then November 25th is Black Friday. We will be doing our Black Friday grab bags. We distribute 1,000 bags into 50 stores throughout the state. Those bags are for sale for like $25, and they usually have about $300 worth of product. In fact, our bag was so loaded last time that we were thinking that we might have to split it into 2 different bags, but it ended up working out. So if you want to participate in that promotion, just hit me up. And then December 1st, we have our next Cincy night scheduled. It's a frosty affair, licensed for consumption and sales, and a lot of our advertisers get a table as part of their advertising agreement. So we end up having about 100 vendors there, and it's a great way to just connect with the cannabis community and meet lots of great folks working in cannabis. And it's also open to consumers. So a lot of fun. Things are starting to quiet down a little bit, but I'm sure it's a matter of time before we already start seeing some events popping up for next summer. There is a 90-day deadline that you have to adhere to when you're submitting your paperwork to the state. So I haven't heard a whole lot about events in the next 3 months. So we will see what happens, and we'll keep you informed as always. Thanks, guys.
All righty. Now we're going to turn to, speaking of up north, we have the up north kid here. I know you're in the UP today, aren't you, Mr. Sparrow?
I am, and good afternoon, everyone. I can't thank everybody enough for allowing myself to do all these wonderful things, and I'm going to lead right into thanking Tuck and JJ and Adam down there at Goats. What an awesome event. Very humble and gracious host. We had an awesome time and really met some good people. And I'm going to segue into what I'm going to do with these reviews with that as well. I'm going to change the format a little bit. I'm going to involve a little bit more of my excursions as I do these things. Trying to get these guys to throw up a percentage in this economy is a little bit difficult. And then also, there's just not a lot of people cashing in on those percentages. So I don't see a lot of value in doing that. So I'm changing a little bit. And as I move about the state, I'm going to start going to some of these awesome shops. And today I actually get to announce a couple of people. So I'm super excited about today's podcast. But first off, with no further ado, I stopped in Alpena on my way up to the UP and stopped into a good friend of mine, Kevin Courier, who we didn't do all of his licensing, but we were integral in the early stages when he first came to Michigan to open up his Neighborhood Provisions is the name of it. And that's been their model this whole time. But they're in Alpena, family owned, him and his father. Beautiful store, 100% deli style. So you won't find any pre-packed buds there unless it's in a pre-roll. Some flower people they carry, Franklin Fields I seen there, Grown Rogue. And I want to give a big shout out to Grown Rogue as well, because of all of the cannabis that I consumed at Goats that evening, that Grown Rogue Kush Mints that I bought at High Profile on my way to the event was absolute. It was just wonderful. Tasted terrific. The effects were phenomenal. I actually passed it on to another group because I could no longer withstand continuing with that. So what else we got here? Vic carts. They have the Breeze ones that everybody has seen now. Platinum. Their number one seller, they told me, was Crude Boys. They also have Steezy there, True North with those new 5-star, which everybody's raving about. Edibles, Noble Road, True North again. Wild, which I think is one of their big movers up there. Everybody's excited about. Covert Cups, Dixie, Monster. Concentrates, Monster again, Noble Road. Play is a new concentrate company out. I don't have a lot of information on them. And then obviously the 5-star again. Infused pre-rolls, they had the Crude Boys with the tarantulas and the cigar style ones. The Glorious with the hash infused, which are always fun. And then just some regular flower. They had some Peninsula Garden pre-rolls. And then these, which I've never seen, which were leading up to the actual review. De facto. This is a smaller company. I googled the actual de facto company, and their house strains are GMO, Kush Mints, Wedding Cake, Horus, Slurricane, Gorilla Glue number 4, and Windy Dog. I had smoked the Horus last night, and that came in at 17.7 THC with 1.54 terps. And I really am excited when somebody tests the terps in these pre-rolls. The Slurricane was 18.8 with 2.34% on terps. And the Gorilla Glue, which I never, ever, ever buy, which I did, is 22.8 with 2.76% terps. So I'm real excited about that. But if anybody's up in that northeast corner of Michigan, I would highly recommend stopping in and seeing these guys. Just a really cool spot. Had a real homey feel that you find in these mom and pop shops. I had contemplated driving up to Penny's up in Northern Specialty Health, another nice mom and pop shop, one of the oldest ones too. I mean, she's old legacy, but it was another 3.5 hours and another 3.5 hours back to where I am. So that wasn't in the cards this time. Another company that they wanted me to give a shout out to was Lilani B. They're another small cultivator that they deal with. So pricing was pretty good. That's another thing that I'm going to start leaving out of this is the pricing. Everybody knows that prices vary. I know you in Muskegon, you can get ounces for $50, but in other municipalities, it's still, $150. So it's so regional with all these things that I'm just kind of going to start leaving some of that stuff out. So people just check on these things and find out where your price point is. Be honest with your bud tenders, and hopefully they steer you straight. And with that being said, I get the pleasure of introducing our next guest. He actually had donated the pre-rolls for our pop-up party at the MICI Summer Annual. So if anybody was there, we had the Rabbit Hole, which got rave reviews, and also the Peanut Butter Breath, the BX3, I believe, and everybody really enjoyed that too. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Jim Connors of MJ Verdant.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
I love all the names that you come up with for these products, these people. You'd think they'd run out of names after a while, but they're all kind of cute. I really like them. But go ahead, Jim. Let's talk a little bit about the whole issue of last week, the hearing that was held on the cultivator situation. What's your position on that?
I'd vote yes on all of it. I do think, one of the things, if you just want to get right to the summary of it all, is I think when the previous administration prior to Whitmer came in, it was really hard to get anything done, like any movement of any kind. And then all of a sudden we went to open the floodgates, and then it was like, let everything happen all at once. And we got lots of licenses and lots of grows and things started to come online quickly, and we oversaturated things. Looking for some policing and kind of keeping things in check, I think is going to be good. But I do think we need a moratorium. I think we need to slow things down, pump the brakes. It doesn't need to be that way forever, but we definitely need to try to right the ship a bit, because we invested a lot and we're trying to do it right and play by the rules, and it's tough. It's very tough. Wonder if you're going to make it.
Right. They announced at the MICIA event a month ago, and I'm sure the numbers are even higher now, that we're above 650 cultivator licenses. It's probably well north of that now. Yeah. Let's have the other team here. Anybody feel free to jump in and talk to Jim here and get your thoughts out there. Go ahead.
Well, those Class C cultivator licenses give you the right to cultivate 2,000 plants. So if you're talking about 600 plus licenses, do the math. That's a lot of plants. The Cannabis Regulatory Agency Director Brisboe, in one of his final appearances as director, told us that we'd increase the number of plants under lights by, I don't know, what do you say, 56%, something like that. And that's an unsustainable increase in the amount of plants under cultivation, especially since the number of retail outlets is not rising. If there was a greater number of retail outlets that were opening, then all of this overproduction would have a place to go, and we wouldn't be stuck with a saturated market. We would have free flow of cannabis the way it is supposed to be, the way it was for a while. But at this particular point, with the Cannabis Regulatory Agency taking the position that they're not allowed to say no to anybody, if they check all the boxes, they're required to issue that license, then that's going to continue to create more and more of a problem as we move on further down the road. And as a consumer, I like lower prices, but I like consistent products. And having companies come and go and fade and die in this industry, it's not good for anybody, consumers or otherwise.
There's really several problems that need to be addressed. Obviously, the first one is we opened up all these shops and didn't have enough cultivators in the front side. And the first go around, caregivers were able to sell product into the market without any testing. The second go around, we had to, get it into metric and get it tested. I think their style of going about getting the caregiver flower out of here was wrong. The excess grower licenses were wrong. The fact that people wrote up business plans for, north of $3,000 a pound, those folks were wrong. There's a lot of things that need to be righted, but, honestly, a basement price for this stuff, it's a commodity. People farm cherries and apples, and those things don't bottom out. They have bumper crops, they have bad years, but the price still remains solid for those folks to stay in business. And that's a lot of the problems that you're seeing. I mean, here's some great numbers from Jamie right here. There's over 250,000 pounds in metric right now for sale, ready to go. And we haven't even brought down Croptober yet. So it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah, and just back up a little bit, to what Rick was saying, I don't think just adding more dispensaries is going to cure the problem. I would tell you that the municipalities that don't have them are the minor players in the big scheme of things. So if you open it up to every municipality that's not in, you're not going to affect the consumer by the numbers that were upside down already. It will help. Don't get me wrong. It will help. I agree. We need more dispos, but that's not the saving grace to everything. We need to slow the roll on the amount of product that's hitting the shelves. And you mentioned too that, as a consumer, everyone wants a better price. But I also think that the quality of the product that's being distributed has been lessened a lot over the last year as well. There's a lot of radiated weed that's hitting the shelves. There's a lot of outdoor grow stuff that's getting through radiation, and it's, I think, lowering the overall quality. Yes, you still have your top strains, but we're being forced to sell them for bottom prices because that's what the market is bringing in. And then you couple in all these new consumers that are getting into the understanding that they can buy legal weed now. They're not afraid. They're also very uneducated. So, this is kind of like all this recipe for disaster in my mind versus a slow roll, educating the market, educating the bud tenders, making sure the quality stays, testing passes, standards are met and followed, policing's in place. The regulatory agency that's supposed to be overseeing it, they never do anything. They're not really watching what's happening. So I think slowing down everything, seeing what mess we created and how to untangle some of it is really the answer. It's not one thing that's going to fix it. You got to fix like 10 things, or at least work on them. And we'll start seeing a better result for everybody at that point.
And I know from the consumer side too, that I would much prefer having a solid 1 gram pre-roll, just flower, not in, all this infusion came on because people couldn't grow flower that was you don't need to infuse good flower. I know everybody enjoyed those rabbit holes at the MICIA conference, and it's just an amazing flower in rolled right, and it smokes well. You don't need to buy all these fancy exotic pre-rolls. It's the only way people can sell their flower. That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie?
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Mike with Grown In. That's he pushed out a email blast. It came into my inbox on 2 days ago. So, and it's just these 5 graphics that really show, details around the sales, around the amount of flour that's hitting the market, the pricing collapse. I mean, they're graphs that really show how dramatic things have been happening. And I agree with Jim. It just seems to be that, something needs to be done. Like, none of us want to see any of these businesses sink. I mean, I guess some of us want to see some of them sink, but there's a lot that, have put their life savings into these businesses. And if we can help prevent that from happening, then that's exactly what we need to do.
I also, on previous shows, we've just to talk about the impact. We've had a lot of several real estate folks come on, and I know others that I've talked to. There's a lot of dispensaries for sale right now. And I'm sure it's because their business plan didn't sort of tell them that they're going to be selling, flour for $100 or $150 an ounce or something, right?
Yeah, that's true. Some of the other states have experienced some contractions. For example, in Oregon or Washington or Colorado, they experience an 8% reduction in participation and in the program in legalized cannabis. Doesn't mean people are buying 8% less cannabis. They're just going to unregulated market sources because, as Jim mentioned, the quality of the flower just isn't where it should be because of the market saturation. So it's also extremely difficult to tell the difference between good flower and bad flower just from things like THC numbers, which we have talked about consistently on this show and in others. where that is just a really bad barometer of quality of cannabis. And your best barometer is a brand name that you trust and recognize as someone who's delivered good cannabis to you before. So right now, there are multiple challenges facing the industry, but the oversaturation of the market as far as the quantity of cannabis, that has to be the biggest, sword of Damocles hanging over our head.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add to that too, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of going on the the consumer's rights to know what's being done to a lot of cannabis out there. And I'm going to stray it. I'm going to get yelled at by lots of people, but people that are radiating flower and not having to let the consumer know is, I think, a complete travesty to the entire industry as a whole. If you fail the test and you have to submit for a variance to get it radiated and have it done, you have to label it. But if you run it through radiation before you have it tested, you don't. And to me, that is the biggest bad card trick that ever happened in an industry. It's a sham. And
it really makes us look at all of the regulated market weed as potentially having been irradiated, not just those bearing a label. So everybody gets labeled that way.
Exactly. And so then
even if it hits metric as being remediated, those retailers aren't forced to follow that through either, and they won't, because they won't sell it the same way.
That's right. And the thing that needs to happen is they need to just fix the rule. I mean, it's just kind of a stupid loophole that was caught in the beginning under review, because it doesn't make any logical sense. If it's radiated, it's radiated. Say it. That's all we want. That's all I want, because we don't ever do it. If it doesn't pass, it's destroyed. We move it on. So I think that's an important thing that would change the game immensely for all the guys that are trying to do it the right way and that want to keep high quality product on the shelves for the consumers, and let it be a consumer price. If they want to buy it at a bargain rate, reduced rate, because it's been radiated, let them. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying let there be a very distinguishing factor between the two. They just went through and had a bulletin issue with a lot of labeling that has to happen and size of fonts and all this kind of stuff. I think that is one of the things that should be on the front of every label, period.
Yeah, we had a big CRA meeting about that, quarterly meeting, 1 or 2 meeters ago, and I think pretty much everybody, with the exception of a few big major producers, said exactly what you said, Jim. The consumers have a right to know, and let us make the decision for ourselves once we're educated on what we're actually consuming.
While the CRA is worried about having something that might appeal to a child, the pertinent information that a consumer would like to read has to have 2010 vision just to even read some of these. I have to take pictures with my cell phone and expand them. And so, the whole thing just really, they did everything they could to fight monopolies, but then allowed 5 or 6 cultivators to be 60% of the flower in the state. Mertma was only written for 5 Class Cs at 2,000 pound or 2,000 plants.
Right.
So that's a total of 10. There's people out there with 20 and 30,000.
We did that on purpose. We did that on purpose because we didn't want mega companies to come in. That's why we put a cap on it. The cap was one of the most controversial things that we did when negotiating the language, was to decide how many licenses we should cap, or if we should cap them at all. And 5 seemed like that's 10,000 plants. That's a good size company that doesn't necessarily have a dominant feature in the industry. The concept of being too big to allow them to fail, Viridis right now with 60% of the testing in the marketplace, you might make an argument that if they were to go away right away due to bankruptcy or some kind of legal action, that would significantly harm the industry for a period of time as they adjusted. You can't allow any one entity to become so big that it would disrupt the whole thing if they fail.
Well, and the other thing too, and this is the big what if and who knows when and what, but if they ever think about legalizing this at the federal level, let's just advance ourselves a bit and imagine what that looks like really from a process and a regulatory side of things. Think of what the FDA is going to do when they come in. What gets done to your food now? Any of your produce that's radiated, it has a symbol on it, period. End of discussion. It has it on there. You might have to look for it. You might not even know it, but it does. And the different steps and processes that are going to go through with that alone, just the FDA type thing, it's going to blow us up. So the idea that we're allowing us to be so loosey-goosey on some of these things and not informing and labeling and telling our consumers what it is, we're setting ourselves up for failure. That should have been one of the things that was thought about in the very beginning to be ready for, knowing that the feds are coming eventually. They are. We all know it. It's just a matter of when. We should be working in that direction, in my opinion, and we're not. We're definitely not even thinking about it from a regulatory side.
We have to do a slight pause for our own little commercial break here. We'll be back. Stay with us, Jim, but we'll come back to this topic and also talk about the new CRA interim director in the second half hour. But let me bring in Dan Keelan, my business partner at Michigan Marijuana Report, MIMarijuanaReport.com, not to be confused with the paper edition, and then also 420 Post. So what do we got today, Dan? What are you going to talk about?
So, hey, happy last day of summer.
Hey, absolutely. It's
Y'all.
80 degrees here now, and tomorrow it's supposed to be 60. So
Yeah, it's supposed to hit the upper 80s here in Dearborn. It's crazy. So this morning, I wanted to pop on the show for a minute and tell a story. I had a meeting this morning in Royal Oak with a business and leadership consultant, and the conversation turned to cannabis. And it was basically the person telling me, I'm not spending any time trying to provide any of my services to people in the cannabis industry. And I said, well, that's a mistake. And we talked about it. And coincidentally, Mike and I had collaborated on an article that we sent out yesterday in our 420 spotlight. So I essentially read the article to the person this morning, and I thought it would be good to just kind of share that on the show, because I think for people who don't know this, people that are inside the industry probably know what's going on, but people that provide services that the industry needs, they need some education. So real life experience this morning where I was telling the person, did you know this is the third largest cash crop in the state? Did you know that revenues are going to be a couple $2 billion, that we're generating, tens and tens of millions of dollars to local municipalities, that the industry is full of small business owners and entrepreneurs? When I said that, the person's ears kind of lit up a little bit, because, she was saying, well, small business owners and family businesses and entrepreneurs are the kinds of people that I try to provide my consulting services to. And I said, well, then, why aren't you working with cannabis? So I think the bottom line is there are still a lot of people in the state who offer professional services, would like to connect to this industry. This industry certainly needs their expertise. And the shameless plug is that we're kind of, more and more becoming the place to go for businesses to connect to the industry. That's why we love to have people like Jim on this show. That's why we do the Monday long form publication and the Thursday newsletter. It's why we're sharing our content with 130,000 people on social media. So that's the plug, that's the pitch, that if you're a business out there and you're trying to grow, you should talk to me, you should talk to Mike. And we really don't want to sell you ads. What we do want to do is get you to underwrite something that's strategic and kind of long-term, underwrite the show, help us with our social media, get in the newsletter, do a lot of things that are going to build your brand, because no matter how great people think they are, nobody knows who the hell you are if you're not marketing yourself. All right. So that's the pitch. Anybody that goes to the website, you can read our article from yesterday. It kind of makes the case that if you're a growing industry, you provide financial consulting services or process engineering or staffing, you're missing a big opportunity if you're not trying to work with cannabis.
And of course, we're working with the Small Business Association of Michigan, which represents 30,000 of these sort of support industries, the accountants, the lawyers, the HR, you name it, it's in that group. And we're actually developing something with the CRA where Brian Kelly and I are going to talk about all that Still to be determined when we get all those details worked out, but we're moving forward on that right now as well.
It's a big need, and your Brian Kelly example is great because when you've got the president of SBAM interested in you helping educate members on this industry, well, that means there's a need. And I want to thank everybody on the show because every week people on the show are doing what I'm talking about. We just need to do it louder, and we need to get more people to pay attention to it. And again, we want, businesses have budgets. They should spend money underwriting this show, underwriting the work that Mike does and the work that I do, because the return on that investment, is going to be there, because they're going to find a whole industry that is trying to grow and needs help.
Okay. Thanks very much, Dan. Let's keep, we can return to the cultivator situation, but I'd like to talk a little bit about Brian Hanna. I looked at that picture of him, and I think he was at the MICIA event, but I didn't know who he was at that point. I don't have any history with the guy. Do any of you know much about him?
I actually do. Mr. Hanna was part of the Marijuana Regulatory Agency, and back before they created that with Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, he was there for about 4.5 years, doing enforcement type stuff, making sure that licensees were compliant in the different ways that they did it. So in all of my dealings with Mr. Hanna, which have been relatively few, I've never had a problem with the guy. He's just a guy. I mean, he's got a lot of police history, and that causes me some concern. I mentioned on this show and in others that I was very worried that they were going to get a law enforcement person to come into the industry and run that, and that I felt like that might accomplish an enforcement directive that they have, but it would also discourage a lot of people from being able to participate or from feeling comfortable coming forward with concerns they have about the industry. So as an interim director, of course, they said that they're going to conduct a national search for a full-time director. I hope that's true. It's a big job, 200 people in a department, something like that. So it's not just something that you can walk into. You have to really have experience being able to run a government agency with that number of people underneath you.
Anybody else? Thoughts?
You're muted, Dan.
Oh, yep. There you go.
No, the CRA is the largest department in money and staff in the state of Michigan. There's nothing bigger than the CRA.
Okay, so the other issue that's not issue, but the other part of this is it's never really been explained why the governor decided to move Andrew out of that job into construction codes. There's been much speculation that is, speaking of Veritas, that it has something to do with that. I mean, do you think that played into it, the whole situation? There's a big lawsuit pending and all the rest?
I'm underneath the understanding that it's a contract, and his contract ran out and it just wasn't renewed. I believe that they were just looking to go in a different direction. I think there is some chaos that has ensued. I know, several months ago, there was a lot of flour that was in metric that was from out of state. I know there's out of state oil as well. I've always heard the stories from Oklahoma. I mean, a liter of distillate 2 years ago was $50,000. It's $1,500 today. You can't even produce it for that. So, I would like to see some policing. I hate to use that word in this industry, but definitely hold some people accountable. And hopefully it will be better for the people that are following the rules, like MJ Verdant. It's tough out there to do it by the book when people are skirting around and working in gray areas still.
And I think with the market being like it is, it's going to pressure people that had full intentions of doing it right to start considering, how do I make the electric bill this month? How do I get payroll this month? How do I buy nutrients this month? Because the numbers are that bad. And so, without the appropriate oversight and to eliminate the guys that are padding numbers and taking product from out of state and other areas, that's a given. That should be happening. It should have been happening from day one. It's what the rules were laid out for. So, when I said earlier, we gotta stop and pump the brakes and see if what we said we were supposed to be doing, we're actually doing. With them bringing on so many new licenses that they continuously bring on, it requires another inspection. That means that officer needs to go out to the facility or do a Zoom and run through the thing. I mean, our last annual inspection we had come through, and I asked the guy when he was coming back, he says, "I'll see you next year." Are you kidding? I mean, thank you. I'm glad I'm doing it right. But at the same time, when you tell somebody that you're not coming back for a year, that's kind of crazy. The state fire marshal, he comes by every 6 months, unannounced, knocks on the door and says, "I'm here." Drop what you're doing, you walk him through. You better have your shit in order because he's there to look. And I'm not, trying to poke or prod or make it happen, but if you have the rules and you say we're going to have an enforcement agency, what part of enforcement does that actually mean?
Well, I can tell you,
I don't know what they're doing.
They haven't improved the number of employees down at the CRA commensurate with the number of licenses that they've issued. I mean, if you start off with 50 people and 100 licenses, and now you're up to 600 licenses and you're down up to 60 people, you increase an awful lot of responsibility, but not as many shoulders upon which those responsibilities can ride. And so that's a problem with government all the time, not having enough people to make sure that things are being done right. OSHA's the same place, there's a lot of things that happen that could have been avoided if there was an inspector that came by every 4 months instead of every 4 years.
Yeah, and I get to that. That's the ramping up though, and that's what I guess I'm saying is, they brought so much on. They got to okay, what's not working and what's working. Let's fix it. And not to throw them under the bus. They didn't know what they were getting into. I don't think anyone really could have gotten the enforcement side or the policing side or even the agency rules and regulations 100% right. You just don't. I mean, even me running our business in the grow, there's always something that was coming up that required us to call an audible and make a change. And obviously being private industry, I can be nimble and do that pretty quick. Government, we know, can't do anything quick. They can't write their name quick. So we have to figure out how to help them do that and be a part of the solution, not just bitch about it, because otherwise we're just going to continue to butt heads. But I think being stern with them, enforcing them and requiring them to do what they sold us. What am I paying for with my license other than just giving you money if you're not going to do anything? I'm asking you to do your job. That's it. Because I pay a lot of money in licensing fees and taxes. So do it. And that's really all I want to see them do. And the other thing with the policing that comes into play, I don't even know that there's a strong line out there with what is the state police's job actually. Because I will tell you, my opinion is the state police and even other police agencies have kind of just it's cannabis. It's legal now. We're not going to be as diligent about it. And I think that taking their eye off that a bit is where a lot of this out-of-state product has made its way into our state. Hell, they're driving across the Ambassador Bridge for crying out loud. How does that actually happen? So just getting back to some of the basic fundamental things, I think would be a huge help.
Let me bring Jamie in because she represents True North Collective. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's hard right now, and Croptober is really going to put a lot of pain onto a lot of people. There's so much outdoor product that is going to be hitting the market that's going to drive the price even lower, and it's hard. Everybody's just hanging on tight right now, embracing for what's ahead, and we're going to see a pretty big cleansing of the market, I'm afraid. And bunker down. And I'm just curious if anybody knows when we might get some sort of answer from the CRA around this. They did the public hearing last week, and what are the next steps then? And when do we expect to maybe see some changes? I'm also, there seems to be a lot of operating in gray area. There's gray area around retail. There was a gentleman in Holland that just posted that there are 24 underground weed shops in Holland City and Holland Township because Holland hasn't opted in. but surround Saugatuck has, Grand Haven has, Muskegon has, and we need to see more communities opting in and more stores to sell this product and not forcing people to have to drive to Muskegon, where they can actually purchase it in their towns. There's enough data that shows that all hell doesn't break loose when a cannabis shop opens in their city. Like, it's time to start putting the right people into these elected positions that will start listening to us and start treating us like a real industry that we are.
Yeah, there's something. I'm sorry, there's something like 1,800 municipalities, cities, townships in the state. The last I knew, there was less than 200 that have opted in. Rick, you might have better numbers.
About 130, something like that, have opted in. And that's combining those that have opted into both medical and recreational. When you talk about timeframes, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, to remove the excess producer license would require a change in the administrative rules. They submit those rule change requests in January. Through the JCAR process, it takes until about July for that to get approved. So they would still, by their own rule, be forced to honor any request for those stupid fucking licenses that we hate so much, all the way until they actually finish changing the admin rules. As far as trying to put a moratorium on licenses for cultivation, that would take an act of the legislature. This is a controversial issue that's probably too big to be handled in the last month or two of the year, especially with election year politics going on and all the other things that are going on to occupy the legislature. So you're legitimately looking at a 2023 fix for that, if the legislature actually decides to take that up or not. Sometimes controversial issues take a while, and after new people get seated in the House, sometimes it takes a while for them to get rolling too. So you usually see the first couple of months of a new year after an election as kind of a slower period where people are just finding their feet, which means, Jim, that all of these are really long-term solutions. Now you're on the front line, man. What are we looking at in the next 6 months, the next 12 months? It's a worsening situation, right?
Well, it is. And that's the tricky part. So, I know there's a lot of grows that, some of the early grows, smaller ones like myself. I call myself a smaller grow. We're 30,000 square feet. We have 2 rec licenses and one med, which I will probably give up and buy another rec just because it makes no sense. That's how stupid the rules. That's a whole nother show probably to talk about that. But guys that are trying that were early, made enough cash, they're going to just try to weather the storm. They might even try to stockpile some of the best product they have, hoping that the market comes back and they have it. It doesn't help the problem. We're just kicking this problem down the road if we don't start depleting inventory. I mean, get your basic, economist book out and do the lessons. If the demand is and supply is outdoing the demand, it will never come down. We have to right the ship and equalize the 2 lines on the curve.
And then you have the black market. There's nobody really has their arms around that, but it's got to be at least as big as the legal market. But I've been hearing it's 2 or 3 times bigger. Again, Rick, I go to you. Do you have any numbers on that or guesses?
Well, we did have that study that was released by the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association 2 years ago, and it basically showed, 50-50, 60-40 kind of a split between 40% of Michigan's consumption being in the regulated market, 60% being in the unregulated market. So when you look at those numbers, but the fact of the matter is, though, that's always going to exist. You'll never get rid of the regulated market. One of the things that was suggested this weekend, and it might have been Jamie Cooper that said it too, was that establishing a expiration date on cannabis so that it doesn't last longer than a year before it's retested or before it's sold at discount would help to eliminate some of the backlog that we have and some of the shelves that are just overpacked and don't have any space. Frankly, I think scientifically, we all agree that THC degrades over time, and it's impossible to put it in packaging that prevents that. No matter how you block the UV light, no matter how you put nitrogen in there, it's still aging cannabis. So we do need to have a retest in order for consumer safety to make sure that that's still what on the label is reflective of what's inside the package. I think that would help. Jim, do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm not going to say the names, but I know outdoor grows last year that still have their frozen and semi trucks freezing right now that hasn't been processed because they're waiting for the market to change. And here you got another crop coming down. How old is that going to be? Like it's going to be over a year old before they even start to do it. Yeah, exactly. So, and guys that are holding on to flower for the same thing, I agree. It kind of goes back to what I just said. They have to write that. And real quick on the black market, I can tell you if you're on any Facebook chats and forums and all this other stuff, people are selling their equipment hand over fist for pennies on the dollar. And there's two reasons. One, the risk reward of being in the black market is not paying the bill to be in the black market. If they're selling it for $600 or $800 a pound, they used to do it in the black market because it paid the bills. It made sense. Even in the black market, $400 to $600 to $800 a pound. Why would I do it? They can barely pay their own electric bill for themselves and all the work that they have to do it. Now, I do know black market guys that are still doing quite well. Their product is, fire. They're able to demand a high price and get it, but it's not that way for everybody. It's just not.
We've seen a decline in the success of some of the hydroponic stores here in the state of Michigan. And those are stores that were predicated on caregivers and people having home grow. And once we liberated every adult to cultivate cannabis plants at their own home, a lot of people thought that it was just going to take right off. And I didn't, because anybody that wanted to grow was probably growing already. There are very few people out there that said, oh no, I can't grow a plant. It's going to kill me. They're going to bust me. So the fact is, loss of caregiver cultivation, loss of other home cultivation, really going to hurt that industry as well. Everything is interconnected. Everything is.
Well, everything went corporate.
And a lot of the black market cannabis now isn't even staying in Michigan anymore. That stuff's going to Indiana and New York and different places now Kentucky too. And so that really raises the risk for those guys too. I feel horrible for the caregivers because they really were the ones that created a system that they weren't necessarily allowed to participate in due to the original Bailey board. Once Governor Whitmer got in there and she tore that whole thing down, they lifted some of the stuff. I mean, they've even taken out the moral clause in MIRTMA and stuff. So pretty much anybody, as long as you haven't done something heinous, can get into the industry now, but it's still very expensive. And why would anybody come? And to further the municipalities coming online, like Jamie said, those guys down in Holland, they'll sell you a $50 sticker and give you a free quarter. That's not going to last long either. But even if we were to build out new municipalities, if a store were to stock 100 pounds of 100 different strains, you know how many shops you would have to open up to deplete 250,000 pounds? There's still more problems, and there is new municipalities coming online every day. I think that resounded out of that meeting that everybody was on last week. I've heard of 4, and I'm in 2 of them right now. So, they are people coming online, but still at the end of the day, what are we going to be? A $4 billion industry? I think those people are traveling, and they'll just have them closer to them. So, we still have a lot of cannabis that needs to get out of Metric and into the hands of consumers.
Okay, we're coming down. Yeah, we're coming down to the end. Are there any final thoughts on either of the topics, Brian, Hannah, or cultivators licenses before we go to shameless plugs?
Mr. Hanna's going to be who he is. He comes to the job at a time when it's tough in the industry, as we've described today. So he's already going to have a tougher road to hoe because he's a cop and people are distrustful of him in that position. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more patient and we'll actually look for results instead of just prejudging his actions all the time.
I wish him all the luck. There's millions of eyes on him right now.
It's a no-win situation, Dan. I'm telling you.
He is in to both your point. He's in a thankless job right now, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, he's not getting put in there to do the dirty work, to clean house, or to do something dramatic or drastic, knowing that it's a short-lived position for him. I don't know. It feels suspicious, I guess, that we knew this change was coming and we elected to put an interim in there rather than, extend Brisbill's thing for another month and find the permanent guy so that he can actually come in there and fix it. You ask how long this is going to take. This is a delay tactic here to not have to do anything, because you're not going to let the interim guy take charge of things and set the new rules to let the new guy come in and have to follow what just got changed. So it's going to take a long time for any or all this to kind of come around. I wish him well. I mean, I wouldn't want his job. I mean, you would just forget it. So I do wish him well. I hope he does the right thing.
Plus, that job you serve at the pleasure of the governor. It is not an elected job. If she doesn't want you in there, you're gone, so.
Well, the contracts are written, you can be moved laterally within the state government. You can't.
Well, like Mr. Brisboe did. Yeah. So.
But she's got to get elected. So.
Oh, yeah. Right. Nothing's going to happen till after the elections. So we got 6 or 8 weeks here. Of,
exactly.
It just is, right? Deal with it. So.
Yeah.
All right, since we got you on camera there, Jim, or did have you on camera, and you're the newbie here, we do the shameless plugs, which is how do people find out more about your product, where you sell your product, all that sort of stuff. Go ahead.
Well, I think first, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. If you ever want me back, I'm here, so give me a call. But go to our website, mjverdant.com. There's we put a lot of time and effort into it to organize everything. You can find all the different dispensaries. I'm not going to attempt to name them all. There's quite a few, probably over 50 or 60 now. We have probably 10 or 15 different strains that are constantly in rotation. Some of our favorites we keep, Rabbit Hole is one of them. Peanut Butter Breath, Cherry Garcia is a huge seller for us right now. We're getting more and more into pre-rolls and some other products that you'll start finding coming out as well. And if we're not at your local dispensary, I say ask for us. We've been getting more and more calls, so we're really starting to pick up some momentum even in this tough market. But I think our product is what's carrying us, and kind of just like the no BS kind of approach to it. We are what we are, and what you see is what you get. And so check out our stuff and our product and ask around. I
got to admit, I have been consuming for a few years myself, and in the era of the pre-rolls, I like it so much better. It's just so much easier to deal with. I have to fart around with, rolling it and cleaning it and all the rest. So yeah, I've been converted to pre-rolls. That's all I get anymore. Of course, now I get the Jamie's grab bag, which I'm going to let you promote one more time. Jamie, take it away.
Yeah, our Black Friday grab bag loaded with lots of yummy products that are grown and processed throughout Michigan. Also, if you haven't tried the new 5-star extract carts, it's a Nug Run sugar sauce cart, and it straight up tastes like hitting a dab out of a Puffco Peak. A lot more convenient though. So get your hands on those. There's about 20 retailers through the state that are selling them at this point, and then they open to the rest of the retailers October 1st. And then our next events for Cincy, we'll have our women's event October 13th. We will have MJ BizCon coming up in November. November 16th is our Stratosphere party, and then our Cincy night on December 1st. So lots going on. And if any of you guys know of any events, get a hold of me. I definitely want to help promote them on the show. Want to know what's going on during these cooler months through fall and through winter.
And how can they reach you?
Jamie.cooper@cincymag.com.
Very good.
Or Canna Jamie on social media. Just look up Canna Jamie. I'm sure you'll find me.
All right. We know you're at a lot of these events too, because I get the Facebook feeds. So, all right, Dan Sparrow.
Yeah, I just want to. I'm not muted. I just want to thank all of our wonderful sponsors. I want to thank Jim for coming on today from MJ Verdant. And I want to give another shout out to Tuck and JJ and Adam down there. I'm looking forward to Goats next summer, and look for Cannabash information. It's July 8th of 2023. As always, I'm Dan at hatchaplanmi.com. I'd love to hear from some folks. I'd love to come check out some products in your shops.
And what does Hatch a Plan do? I'm going to let you finish up with that shameless plug. What do you guys do at Hatch a Plan, Michigan?
We are a full service consulting company from inception to ribbon cutting and then beyond.
Okay, there you have it. Mr. Michigan Normal? Rick
Thank you. I've got a bunch of personal appearances coming up, albeit Pinnacle for a couple of days. I'll be at Vibe in Inkster and then Endo Vibe in Adrian. But I'll also be at John Sinclair's 81st birthday party, which is coming up in Detroit soon. On October 11th, there's a caregiver rally on the steps of the Capitol. On October 18th, 1 week later, there is an entheogenic substance rally on the steps of the Capitol building too. So those are coming up, and you can find all the information about those on Facebook as well. And of course, take a look at Michigan Normal at minorml.org. And you can find me on Jazz Cabbage Cafe, the Green Market Report, all the different things we do.
Okay, I'm Mike Brennan. I'm the editor of MIMarijuanaReport.com. I'm the producer of the show, but only with the help of all these very talented and informed people. And if you missed any part of the show, don't worry. I'll hour or two, I'll have it up at MI Marijuana Report. I'll cut out some of the topics too, so that instead of watching the full hour, you can watch the segments. We'll get her all set for you. And then it'll be available tomorrow in our newsletter that goes to about 4,000 folks. So, we'll have you covered. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll be back again next Wednesday at 1 o'clock with whatever the hot news topic is. I always try to stay as topical as we can be. And until then, say, well, enjoy this weather because we know the hammers are going to fall pretty soon. And
Tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Yes. So get out there and enjoy that sun. Wear that bathing suit one last time, right? Okay. Thanks.